This tutorial is part of the GTFCC online course on the identification of priority areas for multisectoral interventions for cholera elimination. Once data has been imported into the PAMI Excel tool, the vulnerability index is automatically calculated in the tool for each geographic unit. In addition, summary figures are also computed to help guide decision-making on PAMIs at the PAMI workshop. This video will show you where to find and how to use and interpret the different outputs of the PAMI Excel tool. Data has been imported in the Data Input Table sheet. Parameters for the calculations have been set in the Factor Selection sheet, and calculations have been performed in the Vulnerability Index Calculation sheet. In this video, we will go through the sheets R2 to R4, which are the sheets where outputs are displayed. Let's start with sheet R4, Table PAMIs Export. This sheet displays all outputs, including in the last column, the vulnerability index that was calculated for each geographic unit. All geographic units where confirmed cholera outbreaks were reported are PAMIs for elimination by default, regardless the other vulnerability factors that might be present in these geographic units. In the vulnerability index column, the corresponding geographic units are categorized as initial PAMIs. For other geographic units without confirmed cholera outbreaks reported, the value of the vulnerability index is displayed in the vulnerability index column. You can manipulate the outputs in sheet R4. For example, you can sort the geographic units by their vulnerability index value, or you can filter them by their vulnerability index value. Importantly, a vulnerability index threshold should not be determined if there are missing data in the dataset. Missing data should be retrieved first. If not, the PAMI analysis would be biased. In the sheet R4, the column Number of Missing Values is here to help assess the extent of missing data. Use this column to rapidly identify any geographic unit with missing data and the number of variables with missing data for each geographic unit. For example, in our fictive dataset, there are a few geographic units with missing data. The number of variables with missing data in these geographic units ranges from 1 to 5 variables. Another way to assess missing data is to use the sheet R3 Missing Data Overview. For each variable, this sheet provides the number of geographic units with missing data. For example, in our fictive dataset, information on the occurrence of confirmed cholera outbreaks is missing for one geographic unit. As another example, information regarding cross-border location adjacent to an area frequently affected by cholera in a neighboring country or adjacent to an area identified as PAMI in a neighboring country is missing for 7 geographic units. As much as possible, missing data should be retrieved prior to the PAMI workshop. However, if under exceptional circumstances, some missing data remain at the time of the PAMI workshop, they should be discussed at the workshop, and their presence or absence should be assessed in a qualitative manner based on participants' knowledge. All missing data should then be corrected accordingly in the input dataset, and the updated dataset should be re-imported in the PAMI Excel tool. Once the dataset has been updated to fill missing data and re-imported in the PAMI Excel tool, check that there is no remaining missing data using sheet R3 or sheet R4. In sheet R3 here, we can see that there is no longer any variable with missing value. In sheet R4 here, we can see that the number of missing values is 0 for all geographic units. Our dataset is now comprehensive. This means that we are all set to decide on the vulnerability index threshold. Sheet R2, Vulnerability Index Summary, is here to guide decision-making on the vulnerability index threshold at the PAMI workshop. This table provides information on geographic units by vulnerability index value. The vulnerability index values are displayed in the first column. This table also provides summary statistics on the geographic units that are PAMIs for elimination by default due to the occurrence of confirmed cholera outbreaks. These geographic units are categorized as initial PAMIs. Initial PAMIs will always be included in the list of PAMIs for elimination regardless of the vulnerability index threshold that will be selected. For each row, the table shows relative and cumulative numbers and percentages. Relative numbers and percentages are for the geographic units that have a vulnerability index value equal to the selected table line. For example, looking at geographic units that have a vulnerability index equal to 7. 3 geographic units have a vulnerability index equal to 7, representing 3% of the geographic units of the country. About 700,000 of people live in geographic units that have a vulnerability index equal to 7, representing 3% of the country population. On the other hand, cumulative numbers and percentages are for initial PAMIs plus all geographic units that have a vulnerability index value equal to or above the selected table line. In other words, all geographic units that would be PAMI if the vulnerability index threshold was the selected table line. Looking at cumulative values, if the vulnerability index threshold was set to 7, in total, 25 geographic units would be PAMI, representing 25% of the geographic units. 28% of the country population would live in PAMI. Cumulative figures on the population living in PAMIs and on the number and percentage of geographic units that would be PAMIs depending on the vulnerability index threshold selected are proxies for the feasibility of the future NCP. Figures provided in Sheet R2 are essential to determine the vulnerability index threshold value, which in the country-specific context is high enough for the NCP to be feasible, while being low enough to maximize the potential impact of the NCP. Overall, figures provided in Sheet R2 are critical for discussion at the PAMI workshop for stakeholders to collectively decide on a vulnerability index threshold that represents the best balance between the feasibility and the potential impact of the future NCP in the country-specific context. We have now gone through all of the output sheets of the PAMI Excel tool. As we wrap up, we encourage you to explore the PAMI Excel tool and to practice using it, including with the training data set available online. If you have additional questions, you can consult the user guide of the PAMI Excel tool. You're also welcome to contact the GTFCC Secretariat. We're always here to support you.